Sometime before sunset, a group of men stormed a holiday resort in an attack that made history. In this private home, French woman Marie Dedeo was relaxing when these men showed up abruptly. The month was September and the year was 2011. It was to be the second attack in less than a month to tourists by Al-Shabaab group.
They engaged entry so easily, and it was only one shot. I think the husband resisted. From what we can be able to gather, he resisted, and that's why he was shot dead. Maybe they wanted to take the tomb, but he resisted. That's why he was shot.
Dedeo would later die in captivity, and that angered the Kenyan government.
We have to be extra vigilant in protection of the integrity of our territory, the integrity of the security of our people and their property, and above all, keep a very keen watch on the events in Somalia.
Cross-border attacks had reached the boiling point, and so Kenya invaded Somalia to pursue the terrorists. And 5 more countries have been sucked ever deeper into the conflict.
Al-Shabaab sometimes use civilians as a shield. We try as much as possible to limit civilian casualties.
In this program marking 10 years of war in Somalia, we are examining events that have shaped the conflict.
Green, green, green.
A conflict that has cost thousands of lives, including hundreds of Kenyan soldiers.
To those who have lost dear ones, I wish to assure you that their sacrifice was not in vain.
October 2011, lines of military tanks and trucks crossed into Somalia. Mauritius Oduor, a cameraman with Citizen TV, was among Kenyan journalists embedded with the troops that crossed into the neighboring country. His job was to capture moments of bravery, determination and mastery of warfare by Kenya's gallant soldiers.
We were told that now from here, this is the border. This is the border of Kenya and Somalia. We are inside the territory of the enemy. There was no road. We were moving, vehicles were just moving through the bush, through the thicket. And surprisingly, it took us more than 12 hours to get to Tabda. So when we got to Tabda, it was 6 p.m.
Emmanuel Chirchir was KDF spokesman and explains why journalists were allowed to film the raid.
Al-Shabaab had a very good system of communicating, of spewing its own propaganda. And of course, technology gave them that particular environment. There were 2 channels, were basically Twitter at that particular time, and through the Al-Kataib media. So that was our channel of engagement. But for us, we remained steadfast as KDF to tell our story. It was not about what Al-Shabaab was able to do. We had a responsibility, I had a duty, we had a duty to inform the public, we had a duty to inform leadership, we had a duty to inform the soldiers out there in the field, we had a responsibility to also tell the international audience that we are in Somalia to defeat Al-Shabaab and to restore normalcy in that country.
The Kenyan military men had received an executive order from their commander-in-chief, Mwai Kibaki. They had one mission only: pursue Al-Shabaab from their operation base at all cost.
We will defend our territorial integrity through all measures necessary to ensure peace and stability.
They were the best Kenyan weapon against an insurgents that had threatened the country's economic lifeline, tourism. With Western countries issuing travel advisories against Kenya, it was inevitable Kenya would fight back.
Not to forget about piracy that was the Indian Ocean, which it did affect negatively business in this country. And therefore it was only necessary that some action had to be taken.
Somalia had become a pariah state. The country's instability had allowed the Al-Qaeda-linked group to establish its base there. In Somalia, Al-Shabaab was more than just a militia group. It controlled most urban centers and villages.
The continued presence of Al-Shabaab in big number near Kenya border was itself a problem. And since the Federal Republic of Somalia, which Kenya supported, was unable to deal with this issue, it was necessary to act.
And Kenya knew that the only way to secure her borders was to ensure the group's funding and structure is cut off. Getting involved in what was happening in Somalia was no longer a luxury. Weeks after the kidnapping and murder of Marida Deo, Kenya's patience ran out. President Kibaki told his generals and commanders to unleash hell on Al-Shabaab.
These men and women are protecting our self-sovereignty. As a country, we should support these brave modern-day heroes.
On his orders, Kenyan soldiers began strikes against Al-Shabaab militants and their military installations in South Somalia. Kenya was determined not to get bogged down in Somalia, and so it went in full swing. On the ground, in the air, and of course, the deployment of NIS. The attack was relying on speed and precision, with just 2,400 troops on the front line.
But there is also the aspect of, ELINT, electronic intelligence, photo imagery. So we would use our own when there was need to be able to take a photograph of a certain location and bring it back here and analyze it to identify what it is that is obtaining in that locality. So there's a combination of many scenarios and many tools that we're using, but the most critical one is always the human intelligence.
The invasion also depended on buying off Somalia militias.
Luckily enough, we're not operating on our own by ourselves. We were operating alongside Somali National Army, alongside Ras Chamboni Brigade. And therefore, when we had challenges of communication, because we were operating in an environment that was completely foreign, these other forces that were operating alongside with would be able to help out even during patrols and any other situation that may require knowledge of the local local language. So that is how we are able to undertake that. Even in matters of collection of intelligence, we relied a lot more on them.
They need to see you as a friend, otherwise you lose the fight. The counterinsurgency that emerged in Afghanistan and with US being very disdainful of the Afghan culture meant that the Afghans themselves that they had gone to liberate thought twice about who these people from far-flung lands are coming to liberate us. Kenya has succeeded to an extent in Somalia. A lot still needs to be done.
The plan was war intensive. The Transitional Federal Government TFG was the government of Somalia between 2004 and 2012. Established in 2004 in Djibouti through various international conferences, it was an attempt to restore national institutions to the country after the 1991 collapse of the Siad Barre government and the ensuing Somali civil war. They were now a militia fighting with East Africa's sophisticated force.
Green! Green! Green!
Al-Shabaab had forced TFG out of towns, but now the tables were turning.
Of course, before coming here, we were mission ready because we conduct different exercises, the level of training, practicing on different scenarios. And that's how we were able even to, because that is our primary role, to defend our motherland.
Immediately after we had taken our meal, a call came in from the spokesman. A call came in from the spokesman of the enemy. The Al-Shabaab spokesman called, and actually the commanding officer told us, please come and listen what they will say. And then that guy said that I've seen that you have brought the crew just to make propaganda for you, but we will be there to give you the true story. So at that time is now when the reality got into my mind that actually we are dealing with an enemy that have the guts to call the commander of the Kenya Defense Forces, who is leading the operation in the central sector. So that's when I realized that we are actually in the danger zone. So true to their words, in the middle of the night, around 11, they came into the camp. They started firing. They started with an RPG, the rocket-propelled grenade from all directions, coming outside the defensive positions. They were firing, coming inside the camp. So at that time, we were actually inside the bunker. We had been separated. I was in one of the bunker. My colleague Franklin Masharia was in the other bunker. The technical crew, Ndegwa and Kimeli Arap Kemei, were in the different bunker. So at that time is when now we realize that actually we are dealing with an enemy who does not fear anything. So the firefight started from 11 and it ended 2 a.m. That is approximately three hours of non-stop firefight.
By the end of 2011, less than 3 months after the invasion, KDF had captured Busar, Raskamboni, Elade, Fafadan, Belaskokani, Hosingo, Kulbio, Badade, Girma, Bolahache, Damasa, Katama, Badade, and Burgabo towns from the Shabaab.
Hiyo magari isonge mbele for security, over.
We've liberated stretch of areas. We've managed to liberate the stretches from Tabda all the way to Afmado. Kismayu city right now is booming and people are doing their businesses. I'll say that this environment that has provided opportunity for people to live their lives as a success.
Like any other war, the war in Somalia was messy.
Over 1,000 Al-Shabaab fighters had planned a massive attack to overrun this base. They attacked in waves. Each wave had about 100 fighters. Fortunately, our ground troops had enough stocks of ammo in their forward trenches that sustained them until when our Kenya Air Force fighter jets arrived on time to complement the ground troops. Over 300 Al-Shabaab were killed and several of their weapons were recovered and captured during that battle. It is one of the battles that we regard as the most successful defensive operations ever executed after the incursion to Somalia.
There was a convoy of the military that was supposed to go to Belaskokani to supply more ammunition to our military officers who were in the camp in Belaskokani. That was 46 kilometers away. The convoy was supposed to go and come back, so we were inside the fourth vehicle. Along the way, there was just some butterflies and something just kept on telling me, things are not right, things are not right, things are not right. We got to a point where the first vehicle, there was a convoy commander, was a small boy, a 24-year-old boy. Then he stopped. So all of us, we had stopped. So I saw him jumping out of that APC with his gun, and he went down just to survey the area, and then he went back. But the mood was like we were actually inside the enemy trap, and that was the feeling. And actually, true to our conscience, when the convoy commander called the radio and said it's clear we can move, that vehicle only moved for about 10 meters, and then sure, we just saw the explosion. It was hit by the IED, the vehicle went up, big smoke, and then it came down. So at that moment we had bullets from every direction.
Wanamgambo wa kundi la Al-Shabaab walitekeleza mashambulizi dhidi ya wanajeshi wa Kenya waliokuwa wakisafirisha vyakula.
Our vehicle was being fired by rocket propelled grenades, bullets from the PKM, AK-47 and every type of weapon they had. So it was intense and very heavy. An RPG came and hit at the side where my colleague was, that side. It hit that side, then the vehicle moved and then it went back. So the driver was trying to move, because you need to drive that vehicle so that the enemy cannot fire the RPG at the same spot of that glass. At that point he was sweating, because everyone, we knew that actually we were dying. So it was really intense. He was really afraid. I could see fear on his face. So that's the time I realized just to record him. He was really sweating and he was not even speaking anything. We started talking about that thing after we had gone back to the camp. We lost one soldier. There was a friend of ours called Ngetich. Unfortunately, they fired an 84mm anti-tank. So it penetrated the Panhard vehicle and it hit him at the pelvic. So we lost him. All of us, we were very angry. But 20 minutes after that, we saw the air power. Now we saw the YY helicopters came and started firing the enemy from above. So at that time, at least we managed to neutralize the enemy. Nearly all of them were killed. So the helicopters went back to the camp.
June 2012, it was time to roar into Afmado. A helicopter gunship hit terrorist target with stunning accuracy. While about 5 kilometers away, soldiers on the ground prepared for the final march into the town.
Na Wakenya wote wanatutegemea sisi.
KDF knew more about the town than Al-Shabaab expected. Military intelligence officers had entered the town disguised as smugglers 3 months earlier to lay the groundwork for the operation. A week before the onslaught on Al-Shabaab, a team of KDF Special Forces and Rangers trained in the US and Britain infiltrated the nearby Shayo town. They switched off Shabaab's communication infrastructure, ensuring that the militants in Afmado remained in the dark about the impending assault.
The issue is not rushing the operation, but ensuring that the areas that have been liberated, normalcy is restored, pacification operation is undertaken to ensure that things like relief, the NGOs and other agencies can come down here and assist people.
To completely weaken Al-Shabaab, KDF needed to hit its head, Kismayo. It was literally its headquarters and treasury.
In those nefarious activities. So for Kenya to decide, it needed to decapitate that headquarter. So it was very important to capture it, get rid of the Al-Shabaab from there, and therefore deny them the use of that base.
Capturing Kismayo was key to the military men's playbook.
And by taking over Kismayo, we were able to break the backbone, the logistical backbone that supported these criminals, the Al-Shabaab, in Somalia. And therefore we took away from them the logistical support that they were using to be able to carry out major engagement in Somalia.
We actually saw the KDF Special Forces liberating Kismayo, and that really punctured Al-Shabaab's source of income and territory from which it was organizing most of their attacks. And with that one major victory, Al-Shabaab was sent packing to the villages. However, Al-Shabaab is still very active in Somalia.
Kenya had deployed under 3,000 troops to seal off Al-Shabaab strongholds in the massive and rough terrain. The best way to hit the militia was through a sting operation that will see the port captured and the enemy neutralized.
It had to be done the right way, and it had to be the right way once. There was no second chance.
The operation was called Operation Sledgehammer. It was to be executed by the coordinated action of land, sea, and air forces organized for invasion. An amphibious assault got Al-Shabaab unawares.
The capture of Kismayo, it had to be by surprise. And this is part of the logistics and strategy. So you create impressions on one side as you do something else.
Before the assault, training of most of the troops was conducted at Manda Bay. While that of commanders and divers was undertaken in Mkunguni between September 18th and 23rd, 2012. Before the defining raid, the Kenya Defence Forces had conducted tactical estimates and arrived at 3 courses of action. The first one was the capture of Kismayo through Kulbio Husingo and Bulahaji. Second one through Kulbio, Dalayet, Wadajir and Bulahaji. Or through the Indian Ocean using amphibious landing at Jirole through Kulbio, Manda Indian Ocean and Bulahaji. Amphibious assault was given a nod. The operation comprised the maritime force, a landing force and an air component. The maritime force transported the troops and offered fire support. The landing force, which comprised majorly troops from 3BG, captured Kismayo with support from the beachhead security, who surveyed routes, provided guides to meeting points and supported subsequent operations.
Here I'm holding 20 rounds in this magazine. Here I'm holding 40. This way 40. Altogether this 100 rounds. Together this one, this belt has 150 rounds.
Enough to fight?
Enough to fight. As per me, enough to fight. Because only one round, one Al-Shabaab. The enemy, the Al-Shabaab, they are all over here. Anytime we can be shot.
The air component, comprising army attack helicopters and fighter jets, secured the airspace and conducted aerial surveillance to the landing force. The assault began in the early hours of September 28, 2012. One year after the kidnapping that forced Kenya to move into Somalia, there was a feeling in Nairobi that the mission had been accomplished.
It is noteworthy that terrorist activities and border incursions by non-state actors have significantly reduced thanks to the actions of KDF as well as our other security agencies operating under the multi-agency framework.
Jubaland State, like many other states of Somalia, had no army nor police. Kenyan troops under the AMISOM began assisting with security of Kismayo. The objective of rebuilding Somalia relied on establishing a national Somalia army and police force. As Kenya concentrated on rebuilding Somalia, Al-Shabaab was busy recruiting Kenyan youth, building terror cells across the country, and soon they would start unleashing terror on their motherland. The war in Somalia had taken another turn. September 21st, 2013, 4 Al-Shabaab militants stormed Nairobi's Westgate Mall, a symbol of Kenya's middle class and the rich, killing 67 people during a 4-day siege, an attack that left Kenyan security forces with a tough task, eliminating Al-Shabaab elements inside Kenya. 15th January 2015, Al-Shabaab launched an attack on Garissa University College, killing 148 people, mainly students. Public uproar pressurized government to change security chiefs, engage better with youth targeted for Al-Shabaab recruitment, and improve intelligence gathering. Pace of attacks in major Kenyan cities then slowed down. It appeared security officers were getting it right against the insurgents. That is until Al-Shabaab shifted tact, targeting KDF soldiers in Elade on the 15th of January 2016. On that morning, several hundred Al-Shabaab fighters attacked the Kenyan forward operating base in Elade. The battle turned out to be the deadliest attack on peacekeepers in the history of modern peace operations.
This is the time to ensure that that support is consolidated, that we are invigorated, we are emboldened to pursue this enemy to wherever he goes.
Estimates suggest that over 150 Kenyan military personnel were killed and about a dozen taken hostage.
That particular attack was meant to dissuade Kenya, was meant to have Kenya redeploy or withdraw from Somalia. In the same way when, in Mogadishu, way back in the 90s, the warlords brought down the Black Hawk Down and the Americans actually withdrew out of Mogadishu. That kind of an attack was meant to send that kind of message, to intimidate, and also to help Al-Shabaab in recruiting Kenyans to join the ranks and file of Al-Shabaab. Kenya stood strong in the face of a very difficult situation at that time. But Al-Shabaab continued to target Kenya.
A year later, another KDF base in Kulbio was hit by Al-Shabaab with dozens of soldiers killed. Pressure mounted on President Uhuru Kenyatta to pull troops out of Somalia.
If AMISOM pulls out of Somalia in December of 2021, January or February, Al-Shabaab will be in Mogadishu. They will be controlling the government in Mogadishu.
In terms of Al-Shabaab, he's been degraded. He does not pose the threat that he was. So that's how I'll assess our objectives into Somalia.
How was Somalia then and how is Somalia now? How was the eastern border then and how is the eastern border now? What was the coastline situation then and what is the coastline now? What was the situation pertaining at the Indian Ocean and what is the situation right now? And you can see that all those areas are very stable.
We shall continue to collaborate and engage with our regional, continental and global partners in furtherance of Kenya's vision of a peaceful, secure and prosperous world for all.
Somalia is still at the baby steps in its stability quest. President Kenyatta says the sacrifice is about keeping streets of Kenya safe by denying Al-Shabaab a safe haven in Somalia. This is the Kenyan historian.